My number 1366 1251, extraordinary council meeting yesterday for the Dubbo Regional Council. Mayor Matthew Dickerson. Mayor, one of the things came up was the water. We don't have to put our kettles on in Geary anymore.
No, that's right, and we do apologise to the residents of Geary for that. That actually came through, the official notification came through while we were in the meeting yesterday, while we were in the extraordinary meeting yesterday. One of the things... Usher
bring it in a note and back, that's what you're going to...
Yeah, that's right. One of the things that we did talk about at the meeting yesterday was the possibility of some form of compensation for Geary residents. That was about 2.5 weeks.
What sort of compensation? What sort of compensation?
Yeah, we weren't sure, and that was discussed at the meeting yesterday, that it was something that obviously the boil water alert was lifted during the meeting, so we discussed that at the meeting, and we'll actually ask the staff to bring back something to the July council meeting to say how we'd go about that, because we do realise there is a large amount of inconvenience for residents of Geary to have to boil their water for 2.5 weeks. We can understand if it was maybe a couple of days, but for 2.5 weeks we thought it would be fair if we did something. Now, obviously they'll pay less in their water rates because they would be using less water, but it's a large inconvenience to have to go and either buy bottled water or use extra power to boil water before you use it. So it won't be a large amount of money, but we'll come up with something that will actually give to those Geary residents for that inconvenience.
Many would have used tank water, though, during that time, I'm sure.
They may well have. And again, we provide a service to the community. One of those services we provide is water. And if we can't provide that water, then it seems a bit unfair on those residents. So it seems fair that maybe we give them something. And again, don't expect that Geary residents are going to go out and have some huge windfall from it. It's going to be it's really more a token gesture, I think, we'll come up with to say, sorry about that, and here's a bit of pain that we'll experience as council in relation to the fact that you've had to experience some pain as well.
Okay. The other thing that went through yesterday, you and I have discussed it, Mayor, haven't we? The 2.3 has been given the thumbs up by council, yes?
Yeah, that's right. So the 2.3 rate rise, which I think really councillors had almost no choice to do that, because we need to make sure that we're getting our finances back under control. If we didn't go through with that, then our finances would be in a worse position than they already are. So we really need to do that. And that's a bit of pain that the community is experiencing, a bit of pain that councillors, it's obviously very easy for councillors to say, we won't put the rates up and we'll give you everything you possibly want. But you can't keep doing that forever. It's not responsible government. So I would describe the budget that we put through yesterday as a responsible budget, a fair budget, but not a budget that's going to get people running down the street and jumping up in the air and clicking their heels together. It's one that people hopefully will see that this is a responsible council, not a glory-chasing council.
Okay, $640,000, that'll be funneled into roads, of course. How much of a dent in the debt to get our roads up to some sort of drivable standard will that $640,000 make, man?
A small dent. It's not, roads seem to be so expensive. So, for example, out of the budget yesterday that we approved, $3.7 million was allocated to Wheelers Lane, and that's just between Miles Street and Birch Avenue. That's not a huge section of road. It's a fairly large section of road, and anyone that drives along that section, which is a fairly busy road, would know that that particular part of road is not in great condition. But there's $3.7 million to repair that section of road. So
Doesn't that go across the railway line?
That goes, all the way from Birch Avenue across the railway line down to where Miles Street is.
What sort of responsibility or part can the New South Wales government play around that railway crossing area?
Well, if it was just the railway crossing itself, then yes, certainly that would be the responsibility of the state government. But
wasn't that realigned a couple of years ago?
Well, it was widened, if you remember.
That's right.
It used to be the single lane there and the crossing. So the state government paid for part of that at the time. So the actual part around the railway crossing and the widening of that in terms of the treatment of the gates there. But the actual wide roading, that's all a local road there, so that it was all council's responsibility. So, and the same with this road here. We do obviously go and ask the state government for money for various things and various roads, and Boundary Road was largely paid for. That extension there was largely paid for by the state government. But we still, ultimately, council has responsibility for local roads, so we've got to work out ways to maintain them. We can't just keep holding our hand out to the state government and say, please, sir, can I have another? We've got to take things in our own hands hands as well as asking for it. But keep in
Right,
mind,
let's do the math then, Matthew Dickinson. 3.7 for Wheelers Lane between Mile and Birch. 3.7. The budget increase of 2.3 will only give you $640,000 out of that bill.
yeah, that's right. So it's going to help us do repairs. It's going to help us do some small repairs. If someone said we've got a major road, say for example Sheraton Road, the extension to Sheraton Road where people can now drive and hook up to Boundary Road. If people said $642,000, that's fantastic, you'll be able to fix Sheraton Road, we'd probably be able to fix, maybe a few hundred metres of Sheraton Road, but not that whole section of Sheraton Road. So it gives you an idea of just how expensive road maintenance is. And I remember being at a roads congress years ago. I was in Mount Gambier, and I sat around a table with a group of experienced and knowledgeable engineers, and I think the movie Cars was out at the time, and in that movie, a cartoon for kids, Bessie, the greatest road working machine ever built, it was in that particular cartoon where they just dragged it along and you had this terrible road and it was all beaten up, and then Bessie would go over and out the other end would come out a beautiful road. And I said to the engineers...
that's a cartoon, I'm sorry.
That's right. I said, when are we going to have a machine like that? And they all laughed at me. So I think that's the thing. It is an expensive process to do repairs on roads, and there's no magic machine that does it.
Well, see, okay, you extended Boundary, all right, that's right. Now cars are using Sheraton to avoid the main road, and using Sheraton means it's going to wear.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't in great condition to start with,
no.
and that's one that had worn over many years, and so then you add some extra traffic to it, and probably the traffic that's been added to it is traffic that wouldn't normally go along there, so suddenly those people using that say, well, this road is in terrible condition. And I agree, it's not in great condition, and again, we've got to work out some funding stream, some way we can allocate some funds to repair that. But anyone that uses any road, Richard, and it's not a great road, says that that's the most important road for us to repair.
Right.
So if you use Macquarie Street or Tamworth Street, or you use the main street in Wellington, or any road that you're on, you say, well, please, can you fix that road?
That's right. All right, the other stuff that came up too, 770,000 Brisbane and Gibbs Street footpath.
So again, this budget, it's not just about roads. That's a large focus of it, obviously, but this budget is about a whole range of things. So you're right, you've got footpaths there. It's interesting, there's been some discussion around the Disability Access Committee that we've disbanded because we had $2 million to spend on disability access around the community, so they formed a committee to work out where the best place to spend that money was. We've disbanded that because we don't have $2 million, but even it doesn't mean that we stop. So at Wellington Showground, we're spending $50,000 on disability access around there, and we're spending $350,000 over at Lions Park in West Dubbo to create a better amenity block, that does have some disability access. So it's not like we forget about disability access altogether because we don't have a committee for it.
No, okay. The other stuff that you've got, stormwater, 400,000, 600,000 for the Northern Apron expansion of the Dubbo Regional Airport as well.
Yeah. So again, there are so many things that we have to do with normal running of council, but there's also assets that we're continually renewing, continually improving. It's an ongoing process, the same as you do with your house, that you might allocate some money to fix up the driveway one year and maybe the roof's getting in bad condition or the gutters. You're continually doing small maintenance work on your house, so you don't just live in your house and one day it falls down. We've got to do the same with council. We've got to continually upgrade and repair all of the assets that we've got. And keep in mind, we've got over $3 billion worth of assets.
That's right. That's right. And the other bit that stuck out was the Wiradjuri Park, the compulsory acquisition. That's nearly 300,000.
Yeah, so that'll be that amount to help damage the damaged pathway at Pioneer Oval down in Wellington. So that's the other thing I suppose we've always got to remember. No longer is it just Dubbo we're focused on. There are a whole range of assets in Wellington. People do talk to me about a range of assets down there. For example, we've got the pedestrian bridge under construction at the moment, joining Cameron Park across the Bell River to Pioneer Park. That's another $470,000 that's come out of the budget this year. You've got a whole range of different assets that are continually being upgraded around Wellington as well.
Yeah, okay. And the other thing was the new strategy, you're calling it, Matthew Dickinson, created to communicate development opportunities, guidance materials and development toolkits to the community. Well, can you explain that?
Some of this is about the fact that we've got such a lack of land and such a lack of housing at the moment. So some of this is...
We haven't got a lack of land, have we?
Well, we've got a lack of developed land. So we've got a lack of land that you can go and buy today and go and put a house on. We've got lots of development opportunities with both individual or private developers and council that own that, but it takes time to get that land up to the stage where it can actually have a house built on it. Even things like the concrete pipes that need to go in the ground. Some developers are telling me when they order those pipes today, in 10 months' time, those pipes will be delivered because there's huge demand on all of those building infrastructure components. So this is really about letting people know what development opportunities there are in a whole range of ways, including some people might have a house on a large block of land and they might want to build what would traditionally be called a granny flat, technically called a secondary dwelling. Maybe that's a way for some people to produce more housing in the city without going out and having to get new parcels of land.
You're not going to revisit South Dubbo, are you?
No, the old Save Our South campaign, which obviously you're very familiar with.
I've still got the target on my back, don't worry.
That's right. That was a planning proposal, a change of planning that would have occurred through South Dubbo if that had have gone ahead. It didn't go ahead. But it doesn't mean there aren't still planning opportunities for people to do that. So some of the...
But you can do it anyway, can't you? If you reckon you can do a battle axe block on your big block of land, you can do it. You can apply, can't you?
That's exactly right. There are certain things you can do, and probably the most common thing that you can do around that is that what people would call a granny flat. So being able to build that, it's got to be a certain size, and again, without getting too technical, normally it's about 70% of the size of the main dwelling. So you can build something that's smaller than your main dwelling, not the same size as, not bigger than, but something smaller than, and that might be appropriate for you to be able to have somewhere for teenagers, for a grandparent to live, that sort of thing. So those sort of opportunities.
Okay. The other thing I keep meaning to mention this to you, Mayor, too, is the knocking down of the old carpet shop next to the Dubbo Regional Theatre Convention Centre. It's been vacant for a while. That you want that as a car park, don't you?
Well, not necessarily. There's a few options for that. We've actually went through council last week that we're going to actually do a short-term lease on the old, what used to be called Carpet Court, for a company. We're trying to encourage companies to be a part of the renewable energy zone that might be associated industries. I think there's a huge amount of potential. Stick up some wind turbines, put a few solar panels on the ground, that's great, but what other industries can be built around that? And there's a company that's out of Canberra that wants to be able to do some solar panel reuse processes. So we've actually just done a short-term, or agreed at council to do a short-term lease for them, 6 months at $100 a week. So it's a cheaper rent than it normally would be, to try and get that startup industry started, to try and kickstart these whole somehow related industries to the renewable energy zone. So that's the first thing we'll do with that.
Recycle solar panels?
Not recycle, reuse. So some people have got solar panels on their roof. We're a very good uptake community of solar panels. So we used to be the number one solar panel rooftop connector in the nation on a per capita basis. We've lost that crown at the moment. We're still very high up. So people that put solar panels on their roof maybe 10 years ago might have filled up their roof, and they might have 3 kilowatts, for example. And they might want to go and put more on their roof, or more efficient solar panels. So then they take the old ones off to put the new, more efficient ones on. What do you do with the old ones? Well, you don't want to throw them out. You don't want to put in landfill. Other people can use those. So there are businesses out there that take old solar panels, they test them, and they say, well, this solar panel is at 93% of what it was when it was new, and then there's a value associated with those panels, and someone else reuses them. So there's a business that's doing that at the moment. We hope now we're going to offer them this cheaper lease for 6 months and say, please set up in Dubbo. You'll have 6 months to get yourself started, and after that, you can move out somewhere where you'll pay commercial leases, and away you go. So that'll be the first thing that we hopefully will do with that carpet court. But they're also investigating, we may move the library, Richard. The library where it's at the moment, it may move. It may stay where it is. We're investigating, for example, the library moving around the old Dubbo City Bowling Club, moving to the carpet court location, or staying where they are and maybe doing some refurbishment there. If we moved it, then there'd be some valuable real estate in the CBD of Dubbo that we could then potentially sell to a developer to develop that site and then help pay for the library if we move that. So that site's being investigated for a few things. It may end up as a car park. It may end up as something else that makes sense around that whole precinct that we've got there.
All right. Yesterday, the budget ticked off, and now we wait for our rate notice to see the 2.3% increase in the rates for the next 12 months. Matthew Dickerson, Mayor of Dubbo Regional Council. Busy day yesterday and busy days ahead. Try and stay warm. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thanks, Richard.
Appreciate it.